Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Hello everyone. Let me introduce my group presentation. We are consist from me, Hafifitrani Putri Yusuf, and my friends Julian Dilipito and Siti Aisyah Effendi. So in this video we will present about grading and student evaluation. Before that, we make this video to complete our final assignment on language and learning assessment lessons in our college. So we are from English Education Department on the 5th semesters, Tarbiyah and Teacher Training Faculty in Manado State Institute of Islamic Studies. So we will start from philosophy and philosophy of grading. What should grades reflect? So you are teaching a course in English in a context of your choice. Choose a country, institutional situation, course content, and proficiency level. You have been given a questionnaire to fill out, so you can see that in the below. That is the questionnaire that you should complete. By completing that questionnaire, you have made a quick, intuitive allocation of factors, established a weighting system to each factor, essentially begun to articulate a philosophy of grading, at least for this course. In a recent administration of this questionnaire to teachers at the American Language Institute at San Francisco State University, the item on the questionnaire which the teacher had most agreement was item A. The first one is at item A, which this item or this point received percentage allocation from 50% to 75%. It is safe to assert that formal tests, quizzes, exercises, homework, essays, all of which are usually marked in some way, are universally accepted as primary criteria for determining grades. Items B and C also drew a relatively strong support, but a word of caution is in order here. If oral participation is listed as one of the objectives of a course and is listed as a factor in a final grade, the challenge to all teachers is to quantify the participation as clearly and directly as possible. And the last one is items D through H. There was some disagreement and considerable discussion after the exercise, but all those items received at least a few votes for inclusions. Next one is guidelines for selecting grading criteria. So the first one is, it is essential for all components of grading to be consistent with an institutional philosophy and or regulation. The second one is, all of the components of a final grade need to be explicitly stated in writing to students at the beginning of a term of study, with a designation of percentages or weighting figures for each component. The third one is, if your grading system includes items D through G in the questionnaire above, improvement, behavior, effort, and motivation, it is important for you to recognize their subjectivity. And the last one, finally, consider allocating relatively small weights into items C through H, so that a grade primarily reflects achievement. So the next slide will be presented by my friends Dwi Julianti Lipito. To Dwi Julianti, time is yours.
Thanks. The next material is calculating grades, absolute and relative grading. I will never forget an university course I took in educational philosophy, philosophy, psychology for a teaching credential. There were regular biweekly multiple choice quiz, all of which were included in the final grade for the course. I studied hard for each test and consistently received intense scores in 90 until 19.5 range. I couldn't understand in the first few weeks of the course. First, why my scores weren't great in the C range, and why students who were, in my opinion, not especially gifted were getting better grades. In another course, Introduction to Sociology, there were no test paper, not graded exercise until a midterm essay style examination. The professor told the class nothing about the grading or scoring system. Then he wrote on the blackboard his grading system for this 100 subjects. There is a in A 51 above, and B 42 until 50, and in C 13 until 14 1, and D 29 and below. Next slide, please. This, these true stories illustrate a common philosophy in the calculation of grades. In both cases, the professor adjusts grades to fit the distribution of students across continuum, and both, ironically, were using the same method of calculation. In a quartile 1, the top 25% of scores. In B quartile 2, the next 25%, and in C, same like in B, quartile 3, the next 25%, and in D, quartile 4, the lowest 25%. Among other lessons in the stories in the importance of specifying your approach to grading. If you specify standards of performance on a numerical point system, you are using an absolute system of grading. The key to making an absolute grading system work is to be painstakingly clear on competencies and objectives, and on test, task, and other assessment techniques that will figure into formula for assigning a grade. Relative grading is more commonly used than absolute grading. So it has the advantages of allowing your own interpretation and of adjusting for unpredicated, easy or difficult of a test. Relative grading is usually accomplished by ranking students in order of performance and assigning cut-off points of grades. An older relative uncommon method of relative grading is what has been called grading on the curve, a term that comes from the normal bell curve of normative data put on a graph. Next slide, please. Okay, next is teacher perception of appropriate grade distributions. Most teachers bring to a test or a course evaluation and interpretation of estimated appropriate distributions fall the interpretation and make minor adjustment to compensate for such matter as an unexpected difficult. This prevailing attitude toward a relative grading system is well accepted and uncontroversial. What is surprising, however, is the teacher preconceived nation of their own standard for grading often do not match the actual practice. And next, institutional expectation and constraints. Some institutions refuse to employ either a letter grades or a numerical system of evaluation and instead of a narrative evaluation of students. This preference for more individualist evaluation is often a reaction to the overgeneralization of letter and numerical grading, being cognizant of an institutional philosophy of grading is an important step toward a consistent and fair evaluation of your students. Okay, thanks. The next material will presented by Aisha. Aisha, time is yours.
Okay, thank you. So the next is cross-cultural factors and the question of difficulty. Of further interest, especially to those in the profession of English language teaching, is the question of cultural expectation is grading. Granted, most English learners worldwide are learning English within their own culture, but even in this case, it is important for teachers to understand the context in which they are teaching. A number of variables bear on the issues in many cultures. It is unheard of to ask a student to self-assess performance. And the second is the teacher assign a grade and nobody question the teacher's criteria. And the third, the measure of a good teacher is one who can design a test that is so difficult that one student could achieve a perfect score. Or as a corollary grades of a rare reserved for a highly select few, and students are selected with PS. And 5, one single final examination in the accepted determine of students' entire course grades. And the last one is the notion of the teachers preparing students to do their best on tests. In tests is an educational contradiction. I should bear in mind this and other cross-cultural constraints on philosophies of grading and evaluation. It is important to construct your own philosophy. This is extra sensitive issue for teachers from English-speaking countries who take teaching position in other countries. The next, please. Philosophy of grading. Along with attendant cross-cultural variation, also must respect to the issue of gauging, difficulty, and test and other grade measures. How do you gauge such difficulty as you design a classroom test that has not had the luxury of piloting and presenting? The answer is complex. It is usually a combination of a number of possible factors. The first is experience as the teacher with appropriate
institution. Second is adeptness at designing feasible tasks. The third is specially care in framing items that are clear and relevant. The fourth is mirroring in class text that students have mastered. And the five is variation of tasks on the test itself. And the sixth is reference to prior tests in the same course. The seventh is knowledge of your students' collective abilities. And the last one, a little bit of luck. After mastering a number of the above contribution to the test that conform to a predicted difficulty level, it is your task to determine with your context and expected distribution of score or grades and to pitch the test toward the expectation. And the last slide, alternative to letter grading. The alternative to grading for formative tests and other sets of tasks have been discussed in previous chapter. A more detailed look is now appropriate for a few of the summative alternative to grading, particularly first self-assessment, second narrative evaluation, third checklist evaluation, and the last conferences. Thank you.
So that's all from us. I'm really sorry if we have many mistakes. I'm really sorry for our bad presentation, but I hope you guys can understand. Thank you so much. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Bye.
Bye.